Campaign undertaken by the DTI. Caro Smit is the founder and director of South Africans Against Drunk Driving, and she joins me now on the line from Pietermaritzburg to talk a little bit more about this issue. A very good evening to you, Ms. Smit, and thank you very much for speaking to us.
It's a pleasure, and good evening to you and all the listeners.
What is your point of view about the role of alcohol, especially on road deaths? Are we too complacent?
Yes, we definitely are too complacent. We need to realize that alcohol is behind at least 60% of our crashes and deaths, and that, I think, is a very conservative estimate because many of, in a crash, both drivers are not tested. So I think it's probably much higher, more like behind 75% of the deaths in South Africa. And, our deaths are very high. They're between 14,000 and 18,000 deaths a year. So most of those are because of alcohol abuse.
And you've been personally affected by it. Please tell us your story.
Yes, my son was a sober pedestrian, and he was crossing a road, and a woman had come from an office party where she had been told not to drive because she was intoxicated by her friends, and she bashed into a pillar, and she apparently went through a red light and didn't see him and hit him and killed him. And, the trauma for families is really terrible because these are very preventable deaths. They are violent deaths. I mean, my son was smashed up. And also there's no time to say goodbye. And so it's just not acceptable. This is not God's will. These are preventable crashes, and they're things that we should all be standing up and saying, enough is enough. We really have to stop this happening. We need booze-free roads. That's what we need.
Let's talk about the alcohol limit. What does it mean, especially in terms of understanding how much liquor intake is viable? If somebody is intending to say that I've just had half a glass of wine and I am able to drink.
Okay, so it depends very much on what you drink, and that's why it's not called drunk driving anymore. It's called drink driving because any alcohol affects your driving. So, especially the people who are not drunk, who are practice drinkers, they never seem or feel drunk, and yet they way over the legal limit, and they are then very impaired if something unexpected happens. So the legal limit for ordinary drivers is less than 0.05, and for professional drivers it's less than 0.02. So for a professional driver, 1 unit comes to 0.02. So a tot of whiskey is 0.02. So even 1 tot of whiskey for a professional driver is too much. They will be over the legal limit, and they are not safe to have passengers. If you're looking at, for example, a glass of red wine that you get in a restaurant, a glass of red wine is usually 3.5 units. So that is, and 1 unit is 0.2, so it's 24607. 1 glass of wine is 0.07 grams, so one is over the legal limit, way over the legal limit on 1 glass of red wine. So it's very, very little. If you think of an ngutu, a quart, 750 mils of beer, there are 4 units in a quart, which will take 4 hours for that to go out your system, and on 1 beer, you're on 0.08.
Let's talk about solutions, Ms. Smit, because the Transport Minister Fikile Mbalula is considering a number of changes to the country's traffic laws, including a 0% blood alcohol level for drivers and possibly reducing national speed limits. Do you think that this kind of intervention would help? So changing the mindset that no drinking at all?
Basically, saying no drinking at all would work, I think, in South Africa. But if we look at what World Health Authority really recommends, they say that our alcohol levels are absolutely acceptable, except that we should have a 0.02 for novice drivers, for new drivers, whether they are 18 or 40. but that our other levels, 0, 5 and 0, 2, we should just be doing more testing and then have more convictions. And then as soon as somebody is convicted, they get a criminal record and they get a suspended license. Or if they have killed, they go to jail. So basically what works in the world is enforcement of our laws. Because, if you think of it, we used to have a blood alcohol level of 0.08, and we changed that to 0.05, and our deaths have just gone up. So it's actually not so much the level. The level of 0.5 and 0.2 is absolutely fine. It is the enforcement of the levels and the convictions. And so you see, if you look at Gauteng and the Western Cape and Pietermaritzburg, we have things called evidential breathalyzers. So that is your breath testing, which is accurate, it's quick, and the person can go to court quickly. We need these breathalyzers to be rolled out through the whole of South Africa. That's what we need to do. So the person gets to court quickly. The lawyers then can't actually really get the person off on a technicality, because these breathalyzers are very, very accurate, and they're calibrated, and they're proven to not be able to get
just a final question, because you are speaking about international best practice as well. I'm just thinking about a legal framework. You're saying if we were implementing some of these policies, we'd be far better off. What about our legal framework in terms of incarcerating people who are found guilty of drunk driving? Is it working?
Absolutely not. Unfortunately, the accused seems to have many more rights than the victim. And so very often the lawyers help the accused to get off on technicalities. So they get off on technicalities not because they're innocent, it's because perhaps there's poor police work. So we need better police work, we need more testing, we need conviction rates to go up, and we need people to know that drink driving is an absolute crime that is costing us incredibly emotionally and financially in South Africa.
All right, thank you so much for speaking to us. Caro Smit is the founder and director of South Africans Against Drunk Driving. This is our question of the day. Please share with us your thoughts on this, including your experiences if you have any to share.